Why would a young woman fleeing war meet her end in America, a country she looked to for protection? This video lays out facts that dramatically change how we understand her story. Perhaps you'll come to see that this tragedy matters not just to her family, but to all of us. This loss struck deeply, not only in her loved ones' hearts, but around the world. What really happened that night? Why did the safety net fail? Today, you'll learn what's hidden behind the headlines, the system's missteps, the coincidences that aligned, the breakdowns that made the tragedy inevitable. Irina Zarutskaya was born on May 22, 2002, in Kiev, to Anna and Stanislav Zarutsky. She grew up with an older sister, Valeria, and a younger brother, Bohdan. Her parents held firm but fair rules. Schooling always came before leisure. Every child had chores, and achievements earned recognition. Their home valued order, responsibility, and respect for hard work. In high school, Irina found her passion in the arts, enrolling in a vocational college to study painting, restoration, and methods for documenting cultural heritage. At the same time, she repaired clothing and sewed bags, earning money on her own. Her family backed her in every way. Her father arranged an internship with a restorer, her mother offered guidance, and her siblings helped photograph her work for her portfolio. In the Zarutsky home, priorities were clear: education, financial transparency, and digital security. Those years in Kiev shaped Irina's core traits: diligence, persistence, a meticulous eye, and a rare ability to blend creativity with practicality. These traits became the foundation for her ambitions and her clear vision for the future. But everything changed in early February 2022. Kiev, their home city, fell under fire, and each dawn came with air raid alerts. For a while, they tried to keep up a semblance of normal life, fetching food, cooking, helping neighbors. Reality quickly swallowed them. Stanislav stayed behind to reinforce their home, while Anna and the children retreated to damp, cold basement shelters at the first sign of danger. Uncertainty became their constant companion: blackouts, lost phone signals, fragments of news. As deadly strikes hit residential neighborhoods and stories of neighbors' tragedies spread, the danger looming over their city became undeniable. Faced with this terrifying new reality, they made an agonizing decision: to leave Ukraine. Despite their deep attachment to the only home they'd ever known, survival, especially for the children, took precedence. Anna took on the responsibility of finding a safe path forward. She researched evacuation routes, reached out to relatives abroad, and studied the requirements for seeking asylum. The goal was clear: to find a country where her kids could continue their education and finally find peace. After weighing their options, Poland, Germany, the Czech Republic, they chose the United States. Friends there had offered to help them settle. Their journey was carefully planned. Irina packed her college art projects and a few personal items that meant the world to her: sketchbooks, drawings, and some sculpting tools. Valeria handled the family's documents and medical records. Bohdan was allowed to bring a few books and his favorite toys to help ease the transition. Stanislav, though he stayed behind in Ukraine, played a key role in organizing their departure. For him, this decision was especially painful, watching his family leave without him. But he believed it was his duty to stay and protect their home. Once they crossed the border, a new chapter began. The family had to complete paperwork, go through interviews, and formally establish their refugee status. Every step took time and patience. They knew life was now divided into before and after, and there would be no going back. Leaving meant abandoning the world they knew, but it also meant giving their children a chance at life. By summer 2022, Irina arrived in the United States with her mother, sister, and brother. They settled in Charlotte, North Carolina. There, they received temporary housing, assistance from local organizations, and a provisional legal status as they worked through their asylum application. The transition came with challenges, a language barrier, finding work, adjusting to a new culture. But Irina saw it as an opportunity. She understood that only hard work and determination would help her build something new. The Zarutsky family stuck together in America. Anna focused on keeping the household running and helping the children adjust. Valeria supported her mom, while Irina took the lead in integrating as fast as possible, signing up for English classes and searching for part-time work. Bohdan started school and began learning the language. Stanislav remained in Ukraine, staying in touch through video calls, holding on to hope that one day the family would be together again. Charlotte welcomed the Zarutsky family with a harsh dose of reality: paperwork, procedures, and the need to secure an income. The first few months were consumed by legal processes and the scramble to stay afloat. Irina chose the most straightforward path, working and studying at the same time. She got a part-time job at a local pizza shop, taking on evening shifts so she could attend English classes during the day. The city's public transit system helped her keep everything on schedule. She mapped her commute carefully, planning around train intervals and transfers. At the pizza place, Irina wore many hats, taking orders, assembling pizzas, packing deliveries, handling the register, and keeping the place clean. She quickly picked up the register system, food safety guidelines, and proper storage practices. Management took notice of her attention to detail and her commitment to hygiene standards. Even during high-stress shifts, she showed up on time and often picked up extra hours to help support her family. On top of that, Irina began volunteering at a local senior care facility. Her duties included escorting residents to meals, monitoring medication times, logging complaints, and helping them connect with loved ones over video calls. Staff members noted her calm approach and clear explanations, which made her a natural fit for working with larger groups of residents. To improve her English, Irina enrolled in classes at a community college. Her goal was focused, to speak comfortably at work and be able to fill out documents on her own. She kept a detailed vocabulary notebook, writing down practical terms from everyday life: banking, insurance, traffic rules, appliance instructions. She also practiced pronunciation to avoid misunderstandings during phone orders. The family operated on a clear financial strategy. Irina tracked all monthly expenses: rent, transit, food, phone bills, and tuition. She set aside part of her earnings for savings, planning to eventually get a driver's license and pay for additional classes. Her siblings helped with translations and day-to-day tasks, while her mother managed legal documents and appointments. Their 2-year plan was clear. First, bring her English up to college-level fluency. Second, earn a driver's license and buy an affordable used car, crucial for late-night shifts. Third, expand her skills. Learn to use industrial sewing machines and complete a basic animal care course at a local center, opening the door for legal side jobs. She also had her eye on a possible internship at a cultural institution in town, if a spot opened up. This was Irina's daily rhythm in Charlotte: evening work shifts, daytime classes, and volunteer hours on the weekends. She brought structure and discipline from her past into this new routine, tracking details, staying organized, and never putting things off. She documented her progress and reviewed her goals monthly. It gave her a sense of control, a way to keep moving forward without losing focus. On the evening of August 22, 2025, Irina Zarutskaya clocked in for her scheduled shift at the pizza shop. Her shift was set to end by 10 p.m., giving her just enough time to catch her usual train home. As always, she logged into the system, received her register assignment, and reviewed the list of evening duties. That night's responsibilities included handling and packing orders, restocking supplies, and keeping her station clean. During slower periods, she helped run the register and made sure food prep stayed on schedule. When her shift wrapped up, she followed closing procedures, wiped down her station, organized boxes, and finalized the inventory log. Everything was completed on time, by the book. Around 9:50 p.m., the shift manager confirmed she was good to go. Irina logged out, changed out of her work uniform, and gathered her personal items. Before leaving, she checked the transit schedule and confirmed the next train on the Blue Line would get her home without delay. The walk to the station was familiar and short. Irina took the main road, well lit, with traffic signals at each intersection. She passed a few crosswalks and reached the East-West Boulevard platform. Checking the arrival board, she saw the next train was just minutes away. The station atmosphere was routine. A few people stood along the platform, spaced out behind the safety lines. Some were using vending machines, others waited quietly near the boarding areas. Irina took her spot at a safe distance from the platform edge, pulled out her transit pass, and prepared to board. Over the loudspeakers, standard announcements played, train arrival updates, reminders about safety and etiquette. The train arrived right on schedule. Doors opened all along the platform. Irina waited for exiting passengers before stepping through the middle door of one car, making sure not to block anyone. Inside, she scanned for a seat and found one near the middle of the car on the aisle. She set her backpack at her feet, held her phone in hand, and plugged in her headphones. Transit policy prohibits blocking aisles or using extra seats for personal items, so she made sure to sit neatly without taking up extra space. The train pulled out smoothly. Stop announcements came on clearly. There were a few passengers scattered throughout the car, some on their phones, some reading, with plenty of open seats remaining. The seating choice let her disembark quickly at her stop. A seat by the aisle gave her direct access to the doors without awkward maneuvering. She double-checked the route map above the door so she wouldn't miss her transfer. Her phone was left on for notifications, ready in case she needed to reply after she got off. Up to that point, the evening had gone according to plan. Shift closed, route confirmed, trip started on time. The next steps were routine. Wait for the right stop and exit on schedule. The internal surveillance record provides a continuous picture, an overview from the ceiling camera complemented by a doorway angle. Irina takes a seat in the middle of the car. Seconds later, a man appears behind her at the window seat on the adjacent row, separated from her by a single seat back. They do not speak, and there is no interaction. The first minute after departure is calm. Passengers sit or stand, empty seats remain. Irina stays still, facing forward, not engaging with those around her. The man also remains motionless, his gaze toward the window, his torso slightly turned toward the wall. The door camera confirms no movement in that area. In the second minute, the man shifts his posture. He pulls his shoulder forward and edges closer to the aisle. The motion is subtle. He lowers his hand into his hoodie pocket, pauses for a few seconds, then checks that the aisle is clear. Nearby riders pay him no attention. No one blocks his movements, and no conversations can be heard. At the start of the third minute, he changes position again. He slightly lifts himself, then reaches once more into his pocket. On the enlarged frame, a folding object appears in his hand. As he straightens, the blade's locking mechanism is visible. His hand grips the handle. The thumb slides along the mechanism. Irina still looks ahead, the distance between them unchanged, and the man gives no outward signal of what he's doing. On the fourth minute, an attack occurs. The man rises, takes a small step to the side, and delivers 3 quick strikes aimed at the neck area. Frame-by-frame analysis shows the motions were brief and nearly continuous. There are no recorded verbal threats or obvious preparatory gestures from the assailant. Irina attempts to stand but loses her balance. Nearby, passengers instinctively step back, and one person quickly moves toward the front of the car. After the strikes, the attacker shifts his body toward the aisle and begins walking steadily toward the next section of the car. The object he used disappears below the camera's view, out of frame. The door-mounted cameras record scattered reactions from the passengers. Some press themselves against the poles, 2 move to seats on the opposite side, and one person hurries toward the passage between cars. In this critical moment, no one attempts to physically intervene. Almost immediately, a passenger from the front rows signals toward the operator's cab. On the footage, he can be seen glancing back, gesturing with his hand, and then moving out of sight behind the partition. Shouts and exclamations are audible in the car, but no organized coordination emerges. Irina remains in her section. Two other riders appear nearby, looking around and trying to assess the situation. From the first active movement of the assailant to the train's full stop, roughly 2 minutes pass. During this time, the doors remain closed and the train continues toward the next platform. All onboard systems, lighting, announcements, function normally. Cameras show that the attacker does not return to his seat or approach the injured passenger again. Instead, he keeps a straight path forward down the aisle. The first calls to the emergency service come in almost immediately after the assault. One passenger from the same car reports a woman who's been injured with a knife, lying on the floor and unable to move. The dispatcher asks for details, the train's direction, line name, and nearest station. The caller doesn't know the exact car number, but describes landmarks inside and confirms the train is heading toward East/West Boulevard. That information is relayed instantly to a police patrol and a county MEDIC team in Mecklenburg County. The call is classified as a trauma with bleeding, with a note about a possible armed suspect still on board. The dispatcher instructs the caller on basic first aid and warns not to move the victim. A second call comes from a neighboring car. An eyewitness reports seeing the attacker walking down the aisle, apparently heading toward the exit at the next stop. His description of the man's appearance and direction helps police prepare to intercept him on the platform. A third call is logged from the platform itself. The caller says he can see a man stepping off the train who matches the description broadcast over the radio. The dispatcher warns him not to approach, only to keep eyes on the suspect's movements. Meanwhile, the dispatcher stayed on the line with a passenger still inside the train car where Irina lay. Her breathing was labored, but she was still showing signs of life. Eyewitnesses tried to follow instructions. One person kept firm pressure on the wound, another monitored her breathing and reported any changes. In the background, the dispatcher could hear the conductor's announcements, the sound of braking and the doors opening, cues that allowed emergency crews to synchronize their arrival down to the minute. As the train came to a stop, the dispatcher instructed witnesses to meet the medics at the door while keeping pressure on the injury. He also warned them that police would be detaining the suspect on the platform at the same time. All calls were logged and time-stamped, later becoming part of the evidence. The train arrived at East-West Boulevard Station. As soon as the doors opened, Charlotte police, already briefed with the suspect's description, moved into position at every exit to prevent escape. A man in dark clothing stepped off the train, matching the description exactly. This was DeCarlos Brown. He did not run. Instead, he walked calmly, looking around. Officers ordered him to stop and raise his hands. Brown complied without resistance. He was quickly handcuffed, and a knife bearing traces of blood was found during the search. After the arrest, he was escorted through a secure passage and handed over to a patrol unit. At that same moment, paramedics entered the train car. Passengers pointed to the young woman lying on the floor. She was unconscious and not breathing. She'd sustained 3 knife wounds, 2 to the neck area and 1 to the chest. Witnesses explained they had tried to stop the bleeding by pressing clothing against the wounds, but their efforts hadn't worked. The medics immediately began resuscitation measures. They applied an oxygen mask and used specialized dressings. For several minutes, they tried to restore her heartbeat, but due to severe injury to the neck vessels and massive blood loss, they could not save Irina. She was pronounced dead inside the train car. After the official pronouncement, police cordoned off the train. The car where Irina had been was closed to passengers, and investigators began documenting the scene. Forensic technicians photographed the area, collected the knife, and secured Irina's personal belongings. Passengers who had been nearby were asked to remain and provide statements. The atmosphere on the platform was heavy. People stood in shock, some in tears, many unable to process what had just happened. Police reassured the crowd that the threat had been neutralized and urged everyone to stay calm. Several witnesses confirmed that the attack came without warning and that the victim had no chance to defend herself. The arrest had gone without incident, allowing law enforcement to shift focus fully to the investigation. All preliminary evidence was collected at the scene. Statements were recorded, timestamps documented, the train's arrival, the suspect's detention, and the medical declaration of death. With that, the first phase of this tragedy came to a close. The suspect was in custody, and the case officially transitioned into a criminal investigation. Following the medical examiner's official pronouncement, Irina's body was transferred for forensic examination. Experts confirmed the police findings. 3 knife wounds, 2 of them to the neck, had led to catastrophic blood loss. One of the strikes had severed a major artery, making survival impossible, even with immediate emergency care. The autopsy results became a central piece of evidence, legally confirming the act as homicide. While organizing the funeral in the U.S., the Zarutsky family faced significant challenges. Irina's mother and sister, living in America, took on the full burden of handling documentation and coordinating with local authorities. Her father, still in Ukraine, was unable to travel and had to participate in the funeral preparations remotely via video call. Being unable to say goodbye in person was a deep, emotional blow. The funeral took place in Charlotte. Irina was remembered as a warm, kind, and open person who had earned the respect of those around her in her new country. At her workplace, the pizza shop, colleagues recalled her willingness to help others and take on extra shifts without complaint. At the senior care facility, she was known for taking on the most challenging patients with compassion and care. The ceremony concluded with a prayer and a moment of silence. The local Ukrainian community stepped in with financial support, helping the family cover burial expenses. Irina's story became a poignant reminder of how war and migration can reshape a person's life, but also a testament to how kindness and light can persist, even in the darkest times. At the time of his arrest, DeCarlos Brown Jr. had a lengthy history with both law enforcement and mental health services. Records from his early childhood are limited, but it's known that his family lived in North Carolina, and his first encounters with the law began during his teenage years. Court records show 2007 as the beginning of his criminal history, starting as a juvenile offender. Over the next 7 years, he committed a string of crimes, including theft, burglary, and robberies involving a dangerous object, along with threats against others. Although some cases were dismissed, his behavior didn't change, and he never held steady employment. In 2014, Brown was sentenced to 5 years in prison for an armed robbery. Yet his release in 2020 didn't bring an end to his offenses, and he soon resurfaced in police reports. In early 2021, he was arrested for an assault on his sister that caused injury, and later for property damage and unlawful entry into a location where he'd been barred. In July 2022, he was involved in an incident related to disorderly conduct, but that too failed to alter his behavior. January 2023 brought a new kind of case: misuse of the emergency line. He repeatedly called the police from a medical facility, claiming an artificial material inside his body was controlling his actions and movements. Authorities classified the issue as medical, advised him to seek specialized help, and after repeated calls detained him under a charge of improper use of the emergency service. He was later released without bond under a promise to appear in court. Family medical records show a diagnosis of schizophrenia, first made in 2014. His mother repeatedly sought involuntary hospitalization because of aggressive episodes at home. Those hospital stays typically lasted about 2 weeks, followed by a brief period of supervision. In later years, he continued to experience delusional episodes about mind control and outside influence. He never engaged in long-term outpatient care, which led to repeated relapses. Between 2014 and 2025, Brown failed to build stable social ties. His mother and sister cut off contact out of fear for their safety, and living together became impossible. Records suggest he was at times without permanent housing, relying on shelters and temporary stays. He did not achieve financial independence and had no steady job. At the start of 2025, during a court hearing on one of his cases, a judge released him on his own recognizance despite his lack of permanent housing and a long history of repeat offenses. Oversight conditions were minimal, just appearing on a set date and complying with basic restrictions. As a result, he remained without systematic medical care or behavioral monitoring. How was DeCarlos Brown Jr. still free by August 2025? It was the result of failures in both the justice system and the mental health system. Judicial logic. In the absence of new, serious charges, judges rely on standard practices: release on promise to appear, unsecured bond, and only minimal restrictions. They weigh the seriousness of the current offense, past failures to appear, place of residence, and social ties. Older incidents of violence lose weight over time, and the lack of a permanent address is rarely treated as a standalone risk factor. Risk assessment. The systems used to rate offenders rely heavily on statistics and generate average scores. Even multiple arrests for violence, threats against relatives, and obvious inability to control one's actions may not trigger a high-risk classification without a new major charge. Individual red flags often get lost in the averages. Supervision. Someone released on a promise to appear simply receives notices to attend court. The use of ankle monitors and frequent check-ins depends on funding and is applied selectively. Without a fixed address, notifications may not reach the person, contact information changes, and enforcement of sanctions is delayed. Mental health. Involuntary hospitalization is allowed only when there is an immediate threat. Short-term stays can stabilize someone temporarily, but don't ensure they'll follow a treatment plan after release. Outpatient clinics have long wait lists. A person without family or housing easily slips through the cracks. Court-ordered psychiatric evaluations can take weeks, during which the defendant remains without treatment or oversight. Information gaps. Courts, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and medical institutions work from separate databases. Diagnoses appear only in broad terms. Information on therapy lapses or missed appointments is inaccessible, and doctors' recommendations are not binding on supervision agencies. Police reports of domestic conflicts typically don't become grounds for restrictions until the case reaches court. Emergency calls. Calls involving irrational claims are classified as medical issues. With a shortage of psychiatric beds, the individual receives a pamphlet and contact numbers. Repeat calls are logged as misuse, shifting focus from the need for treatment to the person's infractions. Transit safety. Transit agencies don't guarantee security personnel in every car. Patrols may be in another section, leaving a window where response is slower. Reliance on cameras and police contact alone can't prevent sudden attacks. Bottom line, with low thresholds for release, weak supervision, and fragmented mental health care, even a long, violent history doesn't guarantee someone will be kept off the streets. The system depends on a fixed address, relatives, and voluntary treatment. Things Brown simply didn't have. Federal prosecutors have charged DeCarlos Brown Jr. with murder committed on public transit, a federal offense that allows the case to be tried at the national level and potentially opens the door to the death penalty. Prosecutors have made it clear they intend to pursue the harshest sentence possible. While the state is also proceeding with a first-degree murder charge, federal jurisdiction gives the Department of Justice the authority to directly petition for capital punishment. The investigation found no connection between Brown and Irina Zarutskaya. According to case records, the attack was random. Irina happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was no evidence of robbery or any other motive for personal gain. Given Brown's prior psychiatric diagnoses, Investigators suspect the attack may have been triggered by delusional beliefs documented in his medical history. However, the prosecution is treating the case as intentional homicide, deferring any legal consideration of Brown's mental state until the results of a forensic evaluation are complete. For Irina's loved ones and the public, the absence of a clear motive has made this tragedy all the more devastating. It was seen as an act of senseless violence. Under federal law, 2 sentencing options are available: life in prison or the death penalty. The Justice Department must weigh aggravating factors before pursuing capital punishment. These include repeat offenses, brutality, the victim's death, the randomness of the attack, and the fact that it took place in a public setting. In Brown's case, every one of those factors is present. The defense is expected to argue that the defendant suffers from a serious mental disorder, calling into question his ability to fully understand his actions. But prosecutors have already stated their intent to seek the death penalty, making this a landmark case. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.